Carl here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. Hey, it's Halloween 2024. Every year we like to try and do it as something, just something, around a particular season. Seeing, of course, as we're a horror movie review site, predominantly we focus on that. Obviously we do the video reviews as well, but this year I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to kind of delve into my past. In particular, my childhood surrounding horror. Now, this is a little difficult to explain. I'm going to try and sum it up the best I can here as an introduction as to what this series over the next month is going to be about. Basically, it's going to be taking movies that left a deep-seated impression, scars if you want, on me when I saw them from a very young age. I watched horror from a very young age, an inappropriately young age to some degree, particularly when you look at some of the movies that I'm going to be talking about across this series. And they left scars on me. Mostly positive in the sense that these days I look at those movies with a lot of fondness and love and still thoroughly enjoy a lot of them. In the case of some of them, they're the most iconic horror movies I've ever seen. In some cases, they're simply bad movies that I have nostalgia goggles for. And there it is. That's what I want to look at. I will be rewatching 31 horror movies that left a deep impression on me over this period. And telling you what it was about them as a child that either appealed or scared or messed me up, and then comparing it to what I think now. I don't want to do reviews, or we do enough reviews, and in regards to a lot of these movies, they're so iconic that there are tons of reviews out there. I can't add anything else, but I do want to just briefly talk about the past and talk about now, and sort of sum it up as best I can in regards to my feelings then and my feelings now, based off memories and based off what, when I take my nostalgia goggles off, what I think now. That's the plan for this October. 31 movies, 31 days, and I've randomly kind of chosen them based off initially what ones just jumped straight into my head. And then from there I went through my own website and looked at like the horror movie years from basically when from about the late 70s to like the early 90s. So, you know, without aging myself, a lot of these movies would have been seen when I was between the age of like 8 and 12, maybe 13, 14. So we're kind of looking at stuff from the 80s and stuff from the early 90s that really left that impression. And we're going to start this one off with one of my most iconic horror movies from my memories, what I always go to when people talk to me about the childhood stuff. It's 1985's Demons. This is Lamberto Bava, the director's Demons, with the big font at the top, Dario Argento presents. When I was younger, I thought Dario Argento was the freaking director because on the VHS box, his name was at the top, and then obviously you had that picture, that blue background screen of the demons coming up the stairs, and Lamberto Bava, you know, small, big font, but still small below. I never really paid much attention to that, I think. So for the longest time, I used to always think, oh, Dario Argento made this movie, and so on. Producer, whereas it is totally Bava's as a director. But they do certainly work well together, and from a writing perspective as well, I should say, they work together on the writing. And the end result is a movie that terrified me as a child. That's what I always remember about Demons, is the fact that it gave me nightmares as a child. Rightfully so. And I think, even now when I watch it, I still get those vibes. I still get those vibes, those childhood fear vibes of these monstrous creatures and being trapped. The way this infection spreads, the transformation scenes. It is simply terrifying stuff. There are so many shots in this movie that, oh man, they still get me. The VHS cover slash DVD cover, Blu-ray, whichever one's one, the one it uses, the shot of them coming up from the foyer up the stairs with the blue light in the background and that slow motion and that horrible music and their eyes are glowing. That cover, it's like burned in me. And that scene, even when I rewatched it to do this, I just sat there mesmerised by it, filled with fear and terror. And to bear in mind, when that scene comes, like, so much crazy shit has happened already that it shouldn't have this much impact. I've seen demons, we've seen up close transformations, we've seen terrifying deaths and gore and all of that. Yet, that scene just always gets me. I still think, I think this one holds up. Personally, I do. I think it looks fantastic for being a 1985 movie. God damn, those makeup effects do. But I always remembered, and when I went back to rewatch it here, I remember thinking, okay, I'm sure this is a movie, if I remember correctly, kind of loses its way near the end. Kind of starts to drift away and get a little bit sillier and sillier and sillier. Yes. So, when I was younger, I never really liked, and I know why, because we had to move it out of the cinema, but I never really liked the inclusion of the characters in the car, who arrive at the cinema, end up going in, and the demons come out, and then you get some more deaths and stuff when they're involved. It slows the movie down. There's this real pace drop when they're in the car listening to music and messing around with cocaine. It's often as well where the dubbing is at its worst. But that scene is weird as fuck now as well. So I've looked into it, and it you know, she is old. She was older, but like goddamn, the girl in the back seat, the blonde-haired one that looks like a goddamn baby. Yet there's a really like slow and appropriate scene involving her boob, her breast, and getting cocaine off it. You see a nipple on her, she ends up getting cut. She's so young looking, it's really, really disturbing. She's got a proper baby face. As I said, look online, it's certainly not the case at all. She's certainly of age and still no inappropriateness there. But it's a weird scene that kind of leads to, like I said, to set up the final third of the movie. And rewatching it, I still didn't really like it. It felt like it kind of, derailed the movie temporarily, and it struggles to get back into it after that, particularly as following that in the cinema the majority of the characters are dead, and the lead male and female actors and the characters kind of reach that point where he's action hero, his shirt's all ripped off and he's on that motorbike driving around the fire, which might be the dumbest but still most fun scene. In that sequence of shots there when he's sort of driving around, there's so many errors and so many sort of puppetry work and bad makeup, it's hilarious. The girl I'm talking about from the car, she as a demon can't act for shit. There's a shot where, because the demons are kind of just chasing them like that, they don't have that deadly threat. And there's a shot where you see her with very poor makeup just kind of going, like that. It's not good at all. But then there are some really cool close-up shots where he's stabbing them with the sword, and that are quite gory. Of course, that leads to the spectacular moment of the helicopter coming down and all that. Does anybody know really what the dude with the mask, you know, the one that hands out the tickets at the start, what was his deal? Really, what was his actual deal? Very, very strange. And I kind of love that it was never really explained. Nor does the sort of like, do we get a full explanation of how like the sort of demon thing works and how like, oh, if some get scratched, well, most get scratched, transform into one. It's something to do, I guess, you know, becoming an instrument of evil and fighting it with good vibes and all that. But, you know, how that plays at the end is obviously very, very odd. But aside from that lull, and aside from the fact that it kind of makes the final third feel a little less impactful, this is still one of my favourite horror movies ever. It really, really is. It terrified me as a child. And I still think it holds up really, really well as an adult. Up there, simply phenomenal. Yeah, it's demons. Of course, can't talk about demons without mentioning that incredible soundtrack as well. Really memorable stuff as a youngster. Really remember a lot of these songs standing out. Your Billy Idol's, your Motley Crue's, your Saxons and things like that, without knowing who the bands were. But also the actual score itself, which is phenomenal. As an adult, goddamn do I appreciate that rock and roll heavy metal soundtrack, but alongside that incredible score. I think I like the score more sometimes, but the use of those actual songs at certain points, genius. Honestly, Demon's soundtrack is phenomenal. What do you reckon? What age did you see this movie? Because I saw this way too young. And for the level of violence and gore in it, no child. I certainly wouldn't have let my child watch it at the age I did. Not that I'm, slamming my parents and saying they were bad or anything like that. Hey, there's a lot of kids in my family. They had to distract us somehow. We were sneaking horror movies here, there, and everywhere. Hell, look at me sitting here right now talking so positively about it. So clearly it was worth it. What do you reckon? You got any thoughts on this? You know what to do. Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at gbhbl. Just search for gbhbl and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.